Now, yesterday, gun control failed. The president was very upset. In fact, came out swinging against Rand Paul, because Rand Paul has said the president has, if I can quote here, the president has used the families from Newtown as props. Rand Paul is joining us now. Hello, Senator. How are you, sir?
Good to be with you, Glenn.
Good to be with you. Is there any other way to describe how the president has used the Newtown families?
Well, you know, I prefaced that comment by a long conversation about how sad I am about the tragedy. You know, I have 3 boys, and I just can't imagine one of my kids going to school and being shot. So I have the grief that these families are going through. I can see the pain in their faces. I can see the emotion, and I have nothing but the utmost respect and sympathy for that. But I want to do something that would help, and I think he's used their tragedy, and he's politicized their tragedy, and it makes me sad. I mean, I'm sad at what happened to the families, but I'm also sad when I see the way that I think the president has used their tragedy and politicized it. And I really do profoundly feel how sad these families must be and how they'll never get over the loss of their loved ones. But I want to do something that would actually stop madmen from killing people. And I think one of the things that attracts madmen to schools is that they're a gun-free zone. And I think that local communities should reassess that. Federal government should reassess that. And I think we should allow people to have some self-defense. We allow it for our politicians, and I think that the average ordinary citizen deserves to be able to have some self-defense as well.
Last week, the Toomey Mansion background check amendment was presented, and you and the Senate were asked to vote on it before you even saw it. It wasn't even out. I've never seen anything like that, Senator.
Well, unfortunately, that's sort of commonplace here, is that we're asked to vote for things before we see them, and things are held until the last minute, and it's tough to read through them at the last minute. But we're sort of sticklers on that, on reading the bills first. In fact, I have a bill that says you have to read the bills first. And in fact, if it's a long bill, we say you have to wait 1 day for every 20 pages in the bill, and that way we'd have enough time to read them. So, we're not a big fan of that. I've actually brought up a point of order on the floor that said that they didn't wait the 72 hours, and they simply voted to overturn me. They said, well, we deem 12 hours to be 72 hours. They just changed their rules.
Unbelievable. Help me out on this. The president was very angry yesterday. I haven't seen him like that. Very angry. And he said that the NRA has just lied to the American people. Boy, could I do a whole monologue on that. How they have just lied to the American people, and he won't stand for it. Where does this go from here?
I think the most important thing is how would we actually fix this problem? So you have to look at the situation. You have a young man that commits mass murder. He's not deterred by being killed. He's not deterred by the death penalty. He's not deterred by life in prison. But we do know he chose a place where there were no guns to do the shooting. He didn't go to the local police station and kill policemen because they would shoot back. So I think that deterrence, like let's say background checks or gun registration, that deters law-abiding people, the good people. The bad people in society aren't deterred by these things. Now, we do have background checks, and 15,000 people were kicked out as being felons last year. 44 of them were prosecuted. So I did support a bill by Senator Cruz and Senator Grassley that would have gone ahead and said, let's prosecute the people who are trying to buy guns, because just because 15,000 people were denied one time, if you don't prosecute them, it just means they went somewhere else the next day, either illegally or legally, and may have tried to buy a gun the next day. So let's make the system we have work before we try to expand it and make it cumbersome on a part of the public that's not committing crimes.
Okay, Senator Rand Paul, let's go to immigration. The Gang of Eight unveiled their immigration bill on Tuesday. Do you support the immigration bill?
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I am working on it. I support the concept of immigration reform and of doing something. That being said, one of the items you brought up this morning on student visas has been close and dear to my heart. I've had a proposal for quite a while to put a moratorium on student visas from certain countries till we get a handle on where people are, whether they're in school, whether they're here to harm us or not. And I still have that proposal, and I'm going to reintroduce that proposal today, and that's to say, look, we have to know. Now, there was a proposal right after 9/11, and it was a group called the National Security Student Visa Check System, and it looked very closely at about 25 different countries that have significant populations that want to harm us, and it had extra scrutiny on background checks before they got here and on what they were doing when they were here. President Obama ended that program. So I think that was a big mistake, and I hope that this won't be someone involved with a student visa. I don't have any special details on the current situation, but I'm concerned in general that students from various countries that are dead set on harming Americans, that we have to be more careful and should have more scrutiny on these students when they arrive.
Well, let me just tell you real quickly, an event was created on this guy 3 days ago. His file contains his deportation record and the reason he's being deported. It's under Section 2123B, Security and Related Grounds Terrorist Activities. His visa now has been revoked. They were going to try to put him on a plane and get him home to mommy and daddy in Saudi Arabia. We exposed it about 2 hours ago, and now it looks like there's a flurry of activity. They were going to classify, you should look at this as quickly as you can, Senator. They were going to classify all of this paperwork as secret sometime this morning, and that's why we couldn't wait any longer. We wanted to make sure this got out. We have shared this with other organizations. Our sources are absolutely impeccable. And there's much more going on around there that we can get your way, but your staff needs to know about it. There's an awful lot going on here.
Well, we will definitely look into it. And just from a general perspective, not knowing the details of yet what's going on in Boston, from a general perspective, we need to have more scrutiny on student visas. We need to know where the students are. Are they attending school? We need to do extensive background checks on people coming to visit us, because the 19 hijackers on 9/11, several of them were here. I think the majority were here on student visas, and were not obeying even the rules of the student visa program. Had we been paying attention, we may well have sent some of these students back home because they weren't attending school.
Help me out on this with Peter King and Rudy Giuliani came out immediately and said, we need even more cameras. We need more money and more cameras out on the streets. First of all, the cameras that caught these guys, at least this is what we can confirm at this point, the cameras that caught these guys were from Lord and Taylor. They're not security cameras from the government or from DHS or the city. So why do we need more cameras? We are creating an absolute trap you'll never get out of.
Yeah, and I think it's also best not to really talk about what we want to do too strenuously in the midst of a crisis. We need to get through the crisis and look at the facts and as far as reforming things. But I agree with you. Most of the surveillance we're talking about that's going to be helpful here is going to be private pictures that were taken. And but the bottom line is we also need to make sure we know who's visiting the country and whether they wish to do us harm, and they need to be checked upon to make sure they're not up to no good.
Could I go back to immigration here for just a second? We don't know who to trust anymore, Senator. And we look at people, and we're never going to agree on everything, but we don't know who to trust. And we know that, for instance, with Common Core, what the hell does Common Core have to do with ExxonMobil? ExxonMobil is running all of these ads, during the Masters saying, we're for Common Core. That's a dirty deal going down there. Why do they even care about it? And so we know you get into Washington and things get slippery and ugly. Why can't we with immigration? Why can't we why don't we do three things and do them in steps? One, secure the border. When you get that one, then it's an enforcement bill. Enforce the laws of the land. When you get that one done, then let's look at what are we going to do with people?
Well, that's what I'm proposing. I've proposed an amendment that's going to be called Trust But Verify, and it says that immigration reform proceeds in a stepwise fashion, but it's dependent upon securing the border. It's also dependent upon Congress voting each year on whether the border is becoming increasingly secure. It also includes reports from each of the governors along the border states with their assessment of whether the border is more or less secure. It includes the benchmarks, some of which are in the bill, but instead of letting the president approve or disapprove of this, we say Congress each year needs to do it, and what we do is we stretch out immigration reform in a stepwise fashion over several years, because it's the biggest complaint I hear from conservatives, and I am one of those conservatives that when they promised border security before, it never came. So we have to guarantee when we do this that the border is secure.
Well, you also have, you have an arrest. The Blaze reported this week that there was arrest on the border, and the guy's like, doesn't matter. The president's going to release me, and I'm going to become a citizen anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Part of the reform has to be when you're caught crossing the border, you don't get a traffic ticket and told to come back in a month. There has to be absolute deportation of those who break the laws. So you can't just let people go. Currently, we let people go and tell them, here's a traffic ticket, come back in a month, and a small percentage come back and the rest don't. So I'm for expanding legal immigration. I'm for trying to figure out how to get work visas to those who are already here and want to work. And I'm also for saying if there's any pathway to citizenship, it's not a new pathway. It's the same one for someone in Mexico City. So if you're in Mexico City right now, you get in line to come to this country and be a citizen. That's the same line that anybody with a work visa that is normalized should get in the exact same line.
Great. Okay. So one last thing. Please check in this immigration bill when you're finished. I'd love to have you back when you're finished reading it and you know everything in it. I have been told by a couple of sources that this includes you become a citizen and then your family can come in and they're a citizen. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. That's what I've heard.
We're going to look at every detail, and I promise you we're going to read the whole thing, and I'd love to come back on and talk about it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work. God bless you, Senator.
Bye.
You bet. Senator Rand Paul.